welcome to Play Better Paintball's first video about paintball fitness. So I want you to know it's currently October 2022, and back in June, I think it was, I reached out to Solace Photography. I said, hey man, I would love to take some of your footage and show people that this position that this player is in right now, or this movement that he's doing, here's what you can actually do in the gym to play that position or do that movement better. And he was like, normally I actually charge people to use my footage, but I love that idea and I love that you can bring that kind of value to the paintball community. So he gave me permission to use his film for free. So big shout out to him. If you're not already subscribed to him, please don't just subscribe, but engage with his stuff so that it gets pushed more and more and help his channel grow. I do firmly believe that he has the best footage of paintball out there. I love the raw footage. I love being able to watch and feel like I'm actually at the field without the commentators, over it. His sound quality, the shots that he get, they really are just phenomenal. So I absolutely love his stuff, and I know you will too if you aren't already subscribed to him. So can't say enough thank you to Solace Photography for letting me use his footage. That all being said, let's get right into this. I'm going to show you the very first thing that I saw from one of his videos that made me think, man, I would love to show people, hey, what this guy's doing right here is, to be fair, it's a weak way that he is playing this bunker, and it's totally, fine. Most of us are pretty out of shape. I'm not saying this guy is. He probably just doesn't know that he could be playing this position much more strongly if he was on his feet, or if he was in maybe a little bit better trained situation to be able to perform more actively in the positions that he is in. Let's get right to it. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm going to stop and pause this as much as I can, but we're basically at the beginning of the part that I was like, okay, I would actually really like to see this player performing a little bit better here. So you can kind of tell he's not completely comfortable in this half kneeling position. He's a little bit wobbly, and he's not moving really fast. So if he popped out of there just the right amount, he would have struggled to get back into place. So he doesn't look real athletic from this position. And there's a lot of context that needs to be taken into account when you're supposedly accusing someone of being out of shape or anything like that. This guy could just be flat out tired. But what I'm noticing here is that the top of the bunker, I'm not sure if my mouse is going to show up in this screen recording, but he has a pretty decent amount of room between the top of this bunker and where his head is when he's in this kneeling position, both knees being on the ground. So to save energy, kneeling is definitely a good way to go, just to kind of catch your breath. If you just sprinted into this bunker and you kind of need to catch your breath, kneeling or half kneeling both make a lot of sense because they let you rest a little bit more. However, I would actually like to see this player on his feet in an ideal situation. So what we were looking at there was basically two positions, a kneeling and a half kneeling position. So I'm going to show you some exercises that would make you more athletic in each of those positions, especially with the intent of trying to get you from those positions and onto your feet. And again, not a lot of people can just immediately jump into the position where you're trying to stay low in that bunker, but also be on your feet. It requires a lot of strength, a lot of mobility. So I'm going to show you kind of a progression that you could do at your gym to start working to where you could hypothetically play that bunker on your feet. Be a lot faster coming in and out from a snapshot, being a lot more ready to, at a moment's notice, move all of a sudden one direction or another. Okay, let's go to it. All right, let's actually start with a video of myself. I filmed this a couple years ago. This was for a fitness program that I wrote. And these are side-to-side lunges, and this would be a way to practice going from what everyone should be able to do who's on the paintball field, standing on your feet, and then getting lower, but without going into a full side-to-side squat kind of movement where you're holding that bottom position. This just gets you into a low position. You can call it a lunge or a lateral squat, but this helps your body practice getting down into the position that you would be in if you were playing that bunker on your feet. So that's a really good way to just start getting into that lower position where one leg's kind of straight and the other leg's in a bit of a squat position. So credit for this video goes to Fitness FAQs on YouTube. I saw him doing this Kozak squat and I was like, yeah, this guy's got the mobility, he's got the look, he did a great job filming. So I'm gonna save myself some time and just borrow his video to demonstrate exactly what I would progress you to after you get used to those side lunges. So you can pretty much tell that side lunge gets you started going towards this particular movement. So this is where you're actually trying to actually sit on each side, and you'll notice one leg is in what would be a squat if you were just to squat straight down. Both your knees are bent, but in this case the other leg is out behind him. So this gets your body used to supporting a lot, if not most, of your weight on one leg, but in a squat position. So you're on your feet, you're in an active position, and hypothetically, if you were in that bunker, you could lean out and come right back in much more quickly because you're on your feet as opposed to on your knees. So you're going to have much more connection with the ground, much more ability to explode off of your feet because both feet are on the ground in this position. So those were two exercise progressions that would get you into what I would consider the ideal position to play the bunker that guy was playing at that specific time. But let's talk about how to make the half kneeling and the kneeling positions a little more athletic, just in case you do need to be on your knees at any point. For this, we're going to go to this video first. Credit to the Kettlebell Kings on YouTube. And let's skip over to where we are in the position. Here we go. So this is the half kneeling position, and this is an exercise that I put in one of my paintball fitness programs. We are in the half kneeling position and we are practicing bending over with a load. And so this would be kind of the first kind of beginner level of this movement. As you can see, this athlete is reaching down and she's stopping when her unloaded hand reaches the ground. So that's a very short range of motion. Nearly anyone who plays paintball should be able to do this exercise. I would start it without weight in your hand. You don't want to necessarily just jump into a loaded variation of a movement if you haven't practiced without weight first. So practice without weight, pretend you're holding it, keep that hand up in the air, but practice this a few times and then find a light weight and do this a few times. Again, stopping when your extended arm reaches the ground and coming back up. After you get used to this, let's go to this variation. So this would be a progression of that, making it a little bit more difficult on your back, putting a little more strain on the muscles. So rather than increase the weight of that last variation, I would increase the range of motion, because by bending over further, you are going to put more stress, more resistance on the spine and all the muscles that support your body when you're leaning out of this half kneeling position. So as you can see, this athlete has his arm bent and he is stopping on the ground when his elbow actually reaches the ground. So he's bending over much farther. So this is how I would, instead of loading the weight more and more and more each week, this is what I would use to progress this movement. After you get used to doing this full range of motion, going all the way down to your elbow, that's when I would start increasing the weight. And I might take you back to the top, go maybe 5 or 10 pounds heavier, have you stop with your arm extended on the ground, and then progress that same weight to where your elbow is now what's stopping you on the ground. And then repeat that process a few times. All right, let's go heavier again, but stop when your fully extended arm stops you. Okay, next week, let's go to your elbow. That is what I would use to progress that movement, rather than just increasing the weight every single week and not addressing the range of motion. Okay, so that was the half kneeling position. Let's talk about the full kneeling position, where both knees are on the ground. I would start you with a body weight kneeling squat, and you always want to do this on a padded surface. When you're on the playing field, I hope you have knee pads, nice thick knee pads to protect those knees. This movement is going to be less about conditioning your muscles, and it's going to be much more about conditioning your joints, particularly your knees, getting used to having your body's weight on your knees, again, on a padded surface, and moving through this squat range of motion from the knees. So we're going to go to Move to Heal on YouTube. So credit them for having this out there. And we're on a padded surface. We are kneeling down, trying to sit on our butt from that kneeling position and coming back up. You will feel a burn if you have not done these very much, even really conditioned athletes. If you haven't done this particular variation, it's very different than doing a squat on your feet. So it might take you 10 reps or so, but you're gonna feel a burn at some point when you repeat these. So for anyone who is not well conditioned in this movement pattern, I would have you do 2 or 3 weeks of working on the volume you can do with this particular movement. Again, not so much to condition your muscles necessarily, but to make sure the knees are able to handle being on the ground, supporting your weight, and moving from the kneeling position. Let's cut back to the variation I would move to next. This is one of the 2 variations I would do. So credit Mama Stay Fit Training here on YouTube. We got a dumbbell loaded variation. So we're basically taking that exact same movement, but we're adding load to it. So this is where we really are starting to challenge the muscles involved with that movement. There's another variation here, and this is actually it. We're gonna cut right into it. This is Brett Contreras, the glute guy on YouTube. And there's a few different ways we can do this banded variation. He's got a pretty heavy load here, but he's essentially in the kneeling squat, and he is using a band against the front of his hips to resist him, so that when he's coming up, he is much more targeting his glutes and making sure his glutes are actively extending his hip. And there's another way we can do this a little bit easier, because not everyone's going to be ready to hop into a squat rack and throw one of these heavy bands on. So let me find you a variation that'll be a little more simple for most of you to implement. All right, so here we have Cure for the Core Strength and Conditioning on YouTube, and she's using a heavy band here, but you can imagine any resistance band that is attached to an anchor point behind you that's roughly the height of your hips from this kneeling position, and you're doing that kneeling squat. By loading the hips with a band, you're going to activate your glutes much more. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong on which variation you go to from that body weight variation, but all 3 are highly viable and excellent ways to just get more athletic in that kneeling position. So you can ask me for my personal opinion in your case, but I think it's good to be a little creative and just switch things up every single week. So try which one you want to. Do you want to go right into a dumbbell loaded one, a goblet variation like she was just holding a kettlebell, a banded variation, or a combination of the 2, having both the band and the dumbbell? Mix it up for yourself, be creative, and if you do want specific advice, let me know. So let's try to tie all of those exercises into a viable program that you could start today. You essentially saw 3 different movement patterns that I would recommend working on: a kneeling exercise, a half kneeling exercise, and then that side-to-side lunge into a Cossack squat. I would work on all 3 of those at least once, preferably twice a week in your workouts, so that you can hypothetically play that position that I showed earlier on your feet. So that's with the assumption that you can't already hold that Cossack squat position, where you are holding your body weight with one leg in a squat position and the other leg extended out to the side. So to get to where you could do that, I would begin with adding side to side lunges in your routine. Get to where you're just going side to side like I was in the video. Then practice pausing a little bit on each side. Then practice holding a little bit deeper, trying to sink down into that Cossack squat position where your body's really resting on that leg that's in a squat position. And again, just expose yourself to it, hold it for a second or 2, then come out, and then get to where you're actually doing those Cossack squats, going side to side, pausing on each side, hopefully holding for 5 to 10 seconds at some point. It's probably going to take at least a few weeks to get there. For some of you, it might take months, but just start today, start this week, start as soon as you can, because in a few months from now, you'll be able to all of a sudden say, wow, I couldn't do that before, and now I can. Now, the kneeling position, I would definitely start with body weight. Again, on a padded surface, can't stress that enough. And since we're doing body weight, it's not like you're going to struggle to do 10, maybe even 20 at first. Some of you might, and that's okay. But I would get to where you can go for a minute. So think more about time and how long you can be in that position actively moving. I would get to where you can do nonstop kneeling squats for an entire minute, maybe even resting for 30 seconds and doing another minute. When you can do that, that's when I would start increasing the weight or the resistance. And again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on going with the banded variation versus the weighted variation, whether that's holding it in a goblet position, one weight with both hands, or a dumbbell in each hand. It doesn't really matter that much. The point is to start getting your body stronger in that position. And for most of you, it's probably going to be easier to just grab weight and hold on to it. But for maybe those of you who have some back issues, there's a good chance that you have a weak back, and doing that banded variation is actually going to be a little bit better at targeting your lower back. So getting your glutes stronger is huge in helping people reduce their back pain. So that's probably who I would say should consider going with the banded variation sooner rather than later. And again, you can combine the two. You can start with the band and soon after do both the band and the weighted version. Now, half kneeling position. For the half kneeling position, I would definitely start with body weight, and I would practice as if you were holding weight in your hand, and I would try to make sure that for 30 seconds on each side, you can go first down to your elbow, first down with your arm extended, so less range of motion. Then, if you can do that with no problems, go down to your elbow on the ground. So more range of motion that forces your spine to bend more. It's going to work your muscles harder. If you can do that nonstop for 30 seconds on each side, that's when I would add some weight. But again, each time you increase the weight, decrease the range of motion. So start with your arm fully extended, reaching down, waiting for your arm to tell you, your full extended arm to tell you when to stop. Then once you can do that, I would do those at least 10 times on each side. When you can do whatever weight you're holding 10 times on each side with no real issue, no real soreness in the days to come afterwards, then you can increase the range of motion to where you're doing that from your elbow. Once you can do that from your elbow, so more range of motion with that weight, and it's not causing pain, you're not terribly sore in the days to come afterwards, then you can increase the weight. After you increase the weight, go back to arm fully extended, then down to your elbow, and then increase the weight again. So that's the way I would kind of progress. Focus on that 10 rep mark. When you're doing something 10 times, it means you are definitely not doing more than 75% of your absolute maximum at that movement. So that gives us a full 25% cushion to know that this is not too heavy for your body. But if you are really sore in the day or two after that, it means you're probably not ready to go any harder than what you already did. So if you were really sore or you felt really uncomfortable while doing that movement, wait until, do another week or two, and hopefully before you increase the difficulty, you will feel comfortable doing that movement, or only mild discomfort, the discomfort that we're looking for when we're exercising, before increasing the difficulty at all. So get comfortable before you make it less comfortable, if that makes sense, before you increase the difficulty. So that concludes today's video. I hope that was helpful. If you want to see a specific position or a specific movement in paintball and how I would recommend going to the gym and training for that position, that posture, that movement, let me know specifically what you'd like to see. Even tag the video itself that you're referring to and say, hey, at this second, here's the player making the move or playing this position. What would you do there? Let me know. I'd love to hear it, and I will respond. It might take me a little bit of time, but I will get to it. Thank you again, Soulless Photography, for letting me use your footage, and thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Please like, subscribe, comment below to help engage and boost this video. It really means a lot and helps a lot. So thank you again.